As we edge closer to the final release of Bricks 2.0, let's take a look at some of the features we can expect. I'll begin by logging into my unified Cloudways dashboard. So just put in my details and log in. Then I'll go ahead and fire up my application, which is the recipe blog. Let me go into it. And I'll open the admin panel. Okay, so now we can head over to Appearance and see what we have installed. So I'll go to Appearance and Themes. And currently, I have the Bricks version 2.0 release candidate active, which means that the final version of Bricks will soon be out. So now let's go ahead and see some of the new features that were added. And please let me know in the comments if you like the features or not. I'm very curious. So here we are in the Bricks settings. Under the General tab, you'd notice that the global elements have now been deprecated. It is now switched in favor of the components. Those are more powerful than the global elements. Then, if you head over to the bottom, you see that we have theme styles loading method. By default, initially, it was set to most specific, but now you can change the loading method for your theme styles to be load all matching theme styles. So for example, let's say you want to create multiple theme styles, like one is dedicated to maybe the general colors, but then on some specific pages, you just want to change some of the styles, not all the styles. So now you can choose to load all matching theme styles based on the conditions you set, and then all of them will be loaded in the priority, but they will all be loaded. The other thing that was added on the General tab is that we now have the data integrity. So you can choose to check for orphaned elements on Builder Save. So it will check for any errors and it will alert you. So that's it for the General tab. Under the Builder Access, we now have more control. Previously, we had only 3 levels of access. So full access, edit content, and then no access. But what if we want to have some specific controls? For example, I've created a role called Recipe Manager using show members, and I want to be able to give the users access to maybe just the pages and some other parts, but not everything. So now I can just go ahead and create a new capability, and I'll give it a name. So let's say Recipe Managers. You can give it a description. Then you can start choosing what post types do they have access to. You can choose to enable all so that every new one, they can access it. Or you can say you just want them to be able to access maybe just the pages. Then you can choose what options you want them to have access to in the general. That is, access the breakpoints manager, the page settings, template settings, font manager, and so on. You may choose that you don't want them to access any of these, so we can disable that. But you might choose that you want them to be able to create templates or maybe edit templates. They can insert templates. They can access remote templates and so on. You can have that choice of how you want it to occur. Also with components, I'll probably activate all of them for the recipe managers. But you have basically granular control over exactly what you want the users to have. You can now go ahead and save that. Let's go ahead and close. And we now have that new capability. You can now assign that capability to the specific user roles. So I've given this user role the recipe manager, and we can save settings. Next, let's head over to the builder. And you can see that we now have access to a new option under the control panel called the font family options. By default, it will be set to show all fonts, or you can choose to show favorites only. So I've chosen that. So we'll get to see the font manager that is rebranded, and we'll see how this show favorites only works. Then, if you head over to the performance, at the bottom, you now see that the cascade layer, the option has been set to legacy because it is now on by default. So those are the features that are added in the settings. Now we can go ahead and check the builder and see some of the things that were added in the builder. So here we are in the bricks edit page. The first thing you will notice is that the color contrast has been improved. This is the new UI, and let's take a comparison with the old UI. The old one was a bit washed out or grayish, and the text versus the background color, there was not enough contrast. But in the new UI, there is higher contrast between the text and the background. So I can easily see that this is the hero section, the trending section, the random pick section. Whereas with the old UI, I was struggling a bit to see the text for the hero section and so on. Then you'd also notice that the top bar has changed a bit. So previously, we had about 7 or 8 icons at the top. Right now, with the new version 2 UI, we have just about 6 icons at the top. So everything has been compressed, and most of the icons have been merged into the command palette. So that's the first thing we'll be checking out, the command palette. That's where everything has been grouped into. But first, I would need to deactivate command UI, which is the preferred command palette that I use. But for the sake of this tutorial, I would have to disable it because they use the same keyboard shortcut, which is Ctrl-K. So let me go ahead and deactivate the plugin. So I'll say plugin deactivate and command UI. So now I can refresh the page. And now you'll notice when I press Ctrl-K, it opens up the command palette from Bricks because I have disabled command UI. In the Bricks command palette, you notice that we have a search bar at the top. Then we have 2 options, one for builder and the other one for post type. That is to streamline our search. You're either searching within the builder or you're searching the post types. There are also keyboard shortcuts. If I press the hash sign or the pound sign, it goes to the builder. If I press the slash, it goes to post types. If you are a mouse user, you can also just click on them and take you there. But I believe the command palette is supposed to be used for more keyboard efficiency, but you have options for both keyboard and the mouse. So let's say I want to search in the builder, then I can quickly search. So I want to search for my font manager, which is the first new feature we'll be checking out today. So I'll search for font, that is to manage the fonts, and I'll press enter. So now I'm in my font manager, and you can see we have the favorites. We also have all of the other options, the Google fonts, which I disabled. That's why it isn't showing up. If you want to use Google fonts, you can go ahead and enable it and download your Google fonts. But I already have my custom fonts. So that's why I just have custom fonts, which you can add using the plus icon on the top. So if I click on the plus icon, you can go ahead and either add them one after the other, or you can do a better option, which is now we can bulk import. So if I click on import, I can just go ahead and bulk import the JSON that has all of my font variations, and it will import everything at once. Let's go ahead and delete that. I don't need it. I already have my 2 custom fonts here. You still have access to the old font manager by simply going to the WP dashboard. So let's head over to the WP dashboard. And then if you go under bricks, you still see your custom fonts. So if you want to use the old method, you can still add your fonts in the custom fonts area, or you can go ahead and use the font manager in the command palette. So manage fonts, enter, and then custom fonts, and you can manage it from there. The other thing that was added is, let me see if I can press the Ctrl-K again. We can now also manage our icons. So I press icons. So I want to manage my icons. You can see I already have the category for my own custom icons, and I've disabled the inbuilt icons because I don't really use all of these font awesome icons. I like to use my own custom icons. So now I have access to my custom icons, which are SVGs. You can create a new set by just typing a name under the option for create icon set. So I can say maybe this is the customer's version. I can add to icon set, and then I'll just choose some icons. These are the SVGs that are already in my media library. So let me go ahead and add icon set. And you can choose to change the color because maybe the background color is not good enough to see the icons. You can now go ahead and change the colors. So if I want it to be EEE, it makes it easier to see. So let's just go ahead and save these, and we'll see how it is in the builder. So we have our icons added. If you want to deactivate the icon for any reason, just click on the icon set to deactive or active. So now that I've done that, we can now come and add an icon. So let's go ahead and add icon element. In that icon element, I want to choose my icon now. If I click on the icon, you see that we now have our two icon sources. So Dave Den or the customer. So let's go to customer, and you see that the background color and the icon color is showing up. If I go over to Dave Den, you see the other color that I set up. So it's easy for you to see the icons on the background. The other nice features that were added are improvements to our color variables. So let me open my command palette again, and this time I'm going to the variables. And what they've added is that the color variables, you can get to see a preview of that color. So you can go ahead and click on the color and change them visually. Whereas previously, the colors were all just shown as the values. You couldn't change the colors. Now you can easily change the colors directly from your variable manager. You can categorize them, which we already had before. And let's go over to I think there is a minor bug. When I open with the command palette, it is showing that it's the classes that is active, whereas it is the variables that are active. So I think that's just a minor bug. But now let me go to the classes. And as you can see, we have our classes, and I can give them categories as well. So I have the core framework classes, the cards classes that I created. You can create a new one, maybe one for your typography. And you can go ahead and drop in some classes into it. So let me say the header is a typography class. So let's go under typography. You can see the header is there now. Let me go ahead and save it. And when we exit, what that has now done is we also got improvements to our global class selectors and our pseudo class selectors. So here we have a section element that contains a text link element. Previously in the older version, if you go to the text link, you'll notice that the global classes, it was just one bulk list of classes, which was a long list. Then if we wanted to add our pseudo selectors, we'll first add a class. So let's say a class name of test. Then we'll have gone to the top bar where we see the icon. That's where we can now add our hover state. And then we'll now style that state. So let's use the hover state of the .test. There's a bit of a disconnect because where the states are is at the top of the toolbar, but where the classes are is somewhere else. So it was a disconnected view, but now they've brought the view to be more connected. They've added that category to separate and other things. So let's see the example. So in this new version, text link, if I go over and I add the classes, first you see that now we have categories. So all of my categories are showing up like I added in my global class manager. Then if I put the .test as usual, now I can access the pseudo class selectors directly from the same search. So now if you just see at the right hand side, there's selectors. If I click on it, I can now choose my pseudo selectors, and they've made some improvements. So now we have our first few options. So I can choose the hover, and now I can see it visually that I'm doing the .test hover. So the hover state of the .test is now visually connected together, so it's easier to understand. But it now goes a step further. If I go over to my selector and I don't want to choose the hover state, I can choose something else. So let's say I want to choose something different, like I want to target a span tag inside of the text link. So I'll say we want to target a span that is a child of the text link. I can now give it a name and say maybe that is the inner text. So create. So what I'm trying to say is that I want to be able to target the inner text of my test class. So that is now making it easier for me to target elements that are maybe child elements, or easily target things that are complex selectors. I can give a complex selector, but just give it a nice, easy label to see. And I can always go back and edit it. So I can edit it and say maybe I don't want to target the span. I want to target something deeper. So I can say I want to target the has a. So if the .test has an a tag, then do something. But let's say I don't know what I want to target. Let's say I want to target a child element, but I'm not sure exactly what I want to target. So for example, let me use something that has multiple elements like a list. So in a list, there are multiple elements in this list. Previously, if you want to style maybe the li in the list, you'd have had to go to the front end, check out what the exact class name is. So I'll save this. Then I'll go to the front end and I'll try to figure out what the class name was, so the list item, and I'll say, okay, there are the li, it contains the span has a class of title, and so on. So if I want to style it manually, then I have to start remembering these class names. But now they've made everything easier. So I can come back to my builder and I'll go and choose a class name. So maybe list test. Then I'll click on the same selectors, and there is now a new icon called Selector Detector. So I'll just choose that. And within the canvas, I can now choose exactly what I want to style. So I have the list selected. I can now start hovering over every of the elements. So let's say I want to style the second element. So I'll click on that. And it gives me exactly everything that is related to that element. It is an li. In the li, it has a content, and in the content, it has a title. Let's look at it on the front end and see exactly if it is correct. So if I inspect, you can see we have an li, which has a .content. Within that, it has a title. So I chose the title. It gives me everything in the cascade. So everything that is in the cascade, I can go ahead and style them. I can even choose that, okay, no, I don't want to style the title. I want to actually style the content. Or maybe I don't want to style the content as a class name, but as an element. I can now go to the edge. You see either the class name or other things that are related to that element. So in this case, it's a div. So I can choose that I want to style div.content, or just the div, or just the content. So let's get rid of the div, and to style that, I can now give it a label for easy remembering, and so on. So that is a new feature that was added, the selector detector. Very important. If you don't want to be doing custom CSS, you want to be able to style everything visually, then this gives you so much freedom and so much power that you don't have to go to the front end to try to piece together what is the class name, how are everything interrelated, and so on. So that is a new feature. Nice. The next group of features relates to improvements in the structure panel. So let's look at some examples. Now we have the ability to bulk select and to wrap and unwrap. So let's see what I mean. So let's say I want to wrap these two elements in a div block. Previously, there was no way to select multiple items. So let's say I duplicate this item and I want to select both items and wrap them in a block. If I go ahead and try to click both, there was no way. If I put Control, Shift, nothing. So I would have had to right click, then choose wrap block, then now start dragging and dropping all of the other elements into it. But now see how easy it is. So let me go back. And this time I'll just click the first item, then hold the Control if I want to click individual items, or if I want to click all of the items in between, then I can hold the Shift key. So it all depends. So let me say Control, and I click the next one, and we now have this blue highlight color. That gives us a couple of things that we can do. First, we can either go ahead and add like a class name to all of those items at once, and then style all of those items at once. Or we can also do other things like move them in the structure panel together. And we can also do the wrap. So I can now right click and I choose wrap block. So now these two items have now been wrapped in a block. See how easy it is? I just hold Control, click all the items I want, and then right click and then choose wrap block, and everything is done. Similarly, if I want to now unwrap these elements, say I want to remove this block and then put the two elements to be direct children of the container. It wasn't possible before. If we go back to the builder and I right click, there wasn't any option to unwrap. But now I can go back, click on the block, right click, and we get to see this option called unwrap. If I do that, it removes that block and then moves all of the child elements one step upward. So they become the parents basically. And that's how easy it is with the elements. Now we have more control and more freedom with how we can move elements. We can go ahead and even move them around together. We can style them together and so on. We also now have a quick access toolbar. I don't know if you noticed it, but if I click on any element, we now have a toolbar on the left-hand side that gives us access to quick options. So for example, content, if I click on it, it takes me directly to the content tab. You can choose the layout. It goes directly to the style tab, to the layouts. These are just like popular options that people normally go to. So you can click on that and you just go directly to the exact option that you need. If you're like me that gets distracted by so many icons, you can go ahead and even hide it. So they say the hide option and you get back your real estate. I typically don't like too much overload in the builder, so I tend to hide a lot of those options. So that's why I will hide it, but it gives you nicer options that you can go ahead and see different parts of the styling process and you can go directly to where you need. For me personally, I tend to just use the search. So I just press Ctrl-Shift-F and I can search for any feature I want, whether it is the background or anything. I can just quickly search and I get the options that I want in the styles. The last feature we'll look at today is the visual grid builder. For the other features like the components, I'll take a look at them in their own dedicated videos. So let's look at the visual grid builder and how it is improving the workflow for the users. So here I have a section and a container with 5 blocks. Now, let's say I want to create them into a 3x2 grid. I know people tend to use different CSS frameworks that will make it easy, but if you don't have any CSS framework and you want to use the visual grid builder, they are very effective. So let me go to the container. Under the content tab, I'll change the display to grid. And we now get a new option by the side called the visual grid builder. If I click on it, you can now basically set up your grid. So I want a 3-column by 2 rows, and I get that visual grid. I can even rearrange them. So say maybe the 5th item should skip 1 and then go to the last space. And maybe I want the 2nd item to expand. So let's see how it looks like. You can also choose to add min-max. That auto min-max that people tend to always say. You can choose to add it, but let's say I want to give it a gap of maybe var, the grid gap. And that's it. Let's go ahead and add the min-max and we'll preview it on the front end. So let's exit the grid builder. And you can see it now helps us to populate all of those elements that we added. So it gives us a visual guide, but then it populates the manual options. So in case you want to change the manual option, you can always go ahead and change it. But now, as you can see, we have our grid. The first item, the second one takes up the full space. Because if I click on it, you can see that's the second item taking up the full column. Then we have all of the other items. And yeah, that's it. That's how easy it is with the visual grid builder. And you can make your styling adjustments with ease. So yeah, these are just some of the features that were added to improve our workflow. So we have a nicer UI that contains the command palette that you can easily use to search either for options or for your pages and your templates. You will have the font manager, the icon manager. We also have the classes and the variable manager have some improvements. I have so many other things that are just improving the workflow. So let me know in the comments, do you think that the builder is getting better, or do you think there are some more things that they need to do to keep up with the trend? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.